Hey everyone, I'm Cucumber and I'm going to be discussing something a little bit different in today's video, and that's Dark Souls. Let me start off by saying that I'm a new player to the Dark Souls series, only having started in January of this year with Dark Souls 3. I like to say that it was a welcome breath of fresh air coming off of Oblivion for over 125 hours I put in during winter break. And after playing a couple hours of Dark Souls at my friend's house, I immediately went home and started my own playthrough, having binge played it for the past few weeks now, dumping over 180 hours between school and sleep. In the 6 runs that I've completed, I can say that with confidence that I have learned many of the ins and outs of the game. While I'm in no way an uber player that can run through it with his eyes closed on a mouse and keyboard, I'm definitely able to hold my own, in most cases. However, edged to my runs, I noticed something about the game that really put a damper on select occasions. Looking back on it, I realize now that this has always been the case from the moment I rose from the grave in the tutorial area, and that's RNG. That may seem stupid to some, or stupidly obvious to others. I really took notice of this side of the game when I first beat the Nameless King. Now for some context. When it comes to games that present certain challenges, like bosses, I came into Dark Souls expecting a sort of progression when facing them. I've experienced in the past that through the games like World of Warcraft, when you fight a raid boss or something similar, you learn the mechanics of the fight over time. You find the best way to deal with certain things, and over your attempts, in general, the boss's health was whittled down. First attempt, you get to 90%, second, 85%, and by your 206th attempt, the boss reaches 0 and the cutting edge appears on your screen. But overall, there was always that sense of progression, even though at times it stagnated. On the whole, you did better and better every time. It took me a while to come to the realization that Dark Souls is, at the very least, different from World of Warcraft. To be completely honest, and this is still the case for me, I'm all over the place when it comes to fighting certain bosses. There were pulls where the boss would have died if I managed to breathe on them, only for the next attempt to have a glaive coming out of my mouth with the boss at full health. I never understood why this happened. Why would I do so well on one try only to be bent over a barrel the next? It never made any sense. By now though, I attribute most of it to be wholly of my inconsistent playstyle. But on my first playthrough, where I found pretty much every boss to range from somewhat difficult to tearing my eyes out difficult, the Nameless King, I can say, was by far not the most difficult for me. I know this is anecdotal, but when I first beat the Nameless King, every pull I had before I killed him, I could not get him below 50%. And it blew me away when after getting throttled by him in all of my previous pulls, I just beat him. I destroyed him. I went from being unable to get to 50% to killing him in one attempt. There had to be something wrong. Nothing had changed about me or how I played. I still had awful timing, my terrible reflexes, and I still rushed headstrong into things to the point where I'd run into the fire and wonder how I died. But I still killed him. All I could think about was how easy that was in comparison to other bosses I faced. I had more trouble with Dancer and Pontiff on my first playthrough. I sat myself down and thought about the pull I killed the Nameless King initially. It was then it struck me. I noticed that during the fight, he did this one attack over and over again, where he lifts his spear and does a single swipe. One dodge for me, and it was a reset for his next ability. He did this continuously until I got him to 50%, where I was able to get through his new moveset and kill him. A difficult fight became quite easy due to RNG. No, this was only for my first playthrough. My second, third, and fourth reassured his difficulty. He's not the only instance of this happening to me. When I killed Osiris on my knight, he did this one attack where he taps his staff on the ground, making a damaging mist around him 3 times in succession. And then he did a swipe attack with his staff and continued the mist attack another 3 times. Probably could have gone out and gotten groceries by the time he was finished. While Osiris isn't a very difficult boss in and of itself for me regardless of RNG, that attack pattern siphoned whatever difficulty he had, as he didn't do anything to fight me. The Soul of Cinder was the same way. Once again on my knight, seems to be a common trend here, during the second phase, the Soul of Cinder would not stop doing those lightning miracles. Almost 10 attacks in a row were him throwing them at me, in the air, or on the ground. And those being some of the easiest things to avoid, I managed to get him down pretty easily just based off of that. Where in most other cases, I don't have the easiest time with him. Before I get too rambly, I'd like to get back to the point I initially conceived for this video. RNG has the power to make Dark Souls relatively easier, and that's unfortunate. It's also one of the main reasons, however, that Dark Souls is also very difficult at the same time, because of the nature of rolling virtual dice. You never know what the boss will do next. Dark Souls is a very reactive game, where something like World of Warcraft relies more on proactive gameplay. Make sure these things don't happen, or prepare preemptively so you're ready when these things occur. all one can do in Dark Souls is wait for that grab attack animation, watch for that charge, and time your roll to avoid that lightning strike. One of the very few certainties is knowing what the boss can do, while knowing what the boss will do is never truly quantifiable. Dark Souls' RNG-based difficulty has the inherent gift of making the game a lot harder at times, but the weakness of infinite probability trivializing the gameplay. What can be done to fix this, one might ask? And that's the catch-22. You don't. You really can't fix it because it isn't broken. That's because if From were to strip this aspect away from Dark Souls in favor of something like World of Warcraft's timer-based system relying on attack orders and executing specific strategies, it wouldn't be Dark Souls anymore. While at the same time, if the RNG-heavy aspect of combat is not remedied in a way to avoid the situations I explained, then it just might ruin the experience for some players based on pure luck. Now I know, there are definitely many other factors that do make the game easier or more challenging, such as the person's playstyle, class, or even gear at times. I know the latter to be true at least, being a user of the noob sword for my first few playthroughs. All in all, I just want to wrap it up by saying that I have no doubt there is something about the mechanics of Dark Souls that totally disproves what I've said, or the fact that what I've personally experienced in the game may not even reach farther than that, my experience. There is nothing that would stop me from believing that those instances I recounted were complete and utter anomalies. And I can say that the game itself was not spoiled for me in the slightest based on the fact that a couple of fights were made easier because I managed to roll 4 7s in a row within the game's RNG table. In the grand scheme of things, it was still difficult for me, being my first Dark Souls game, and it would be a lost shot in the dark trying to replicate what I saw. If anything, this is more of an observation rather than an actual concern of mine. Other than that, I want to thank you all for sticking around for this somewhat incoherent ranting about Dark Souls, and I want to know what you think, and what you've seen in your own playthroughs. Did you happen upon some crazy RNG in your own Dark Souls runs? Be sure to let me know, and if you have any questions, quarrels, or queries, be sure to let me know those as well. I'm Cucumber, and remember, pass the dressing.